Hey guys, Jace here from ADV HQ. It's blowing a good 25 knots this weekend, so today I'm going to be giving my feedback or review on the Formosa Tomahawk 520 centre console. I've fielded quite a few questions over the years and especially lately, so hopefully this vid will be useful for those considering one. Although the boat is now over 10 years old, with today's market and boat builders having lengthy wait times, there may be a few of these finding their way onto the used market, so it might still be useful. This one's a 2010 Formosa Tomahawk 520, and it's got the fully sealed deck. Back when this one was made, the Tomahawk, as opposed to Classic, stood for the more solid construction and the sealed deck. I think the new ones go by the Tomahawk name as standard compared to the Sea Rod, with a Classic after it to represent the plywood flooring. I've mostly used this boat in smooth or partially smooth waters around Hervey Bay. I've taken it to some decent trips with marks like 50 to 60 kilometres from the harbour, so you're talking over a 100k return trip, and experienced some abrupt weather changes while out in the bay. But I can't comment too much on blue water or open water, except for a nice couple of days out at the gutters. I've owned it for about 7 years, so it's a long-term review by an actual owner and a user, not a magazine or someone who's got an invested interest, to be polite. I've had a few different boats, from 375 tinnies, 4.3 mod modified tinny, 525 Stacer Seahorse and a 545 Yalta, and have been in a few of my mates' boats over the years too, so I can offer some comparisons. First and foremost, the Formosa just looks bloody nice, especially for its price. I reckon if you like the look of it, you'll just enjoy eyeing it off in the driveway, under the carport or in the shed. Even after all these years, I still love the look of this thing. But looks aren't too important when you're on the water and underway. She's a wide ass boat, has heaps of beam, and not just towards the stern. The widest part is just in front of the centre console. And it's about 2.46 metres. This no doubt helps to offer awesome stability at rest. Great when you're fishing with a couple of guys, as the boat doesn't lean too much when you're on the same side, or when your family's moving about. The movements, they're not that noticeable. The high freeboard of 76 centimetres from the floor to the gunnel is also fishing and family friendly. With a young family at the time, this was on the list of priority. The extra width also allows for some nice space of your own when fishing with up to about 3 guys. You've got enough space for your own rods, tackle, seating, standing and all that. However, this extra width, especially towards the front, means the nose is wide too. And when faced with quarter on chop with the wind, it makes for a bit of a bouncy ride as the nose pushes rather than slice through, which a thinner boat or a more tapered boat would provide. The large surface area of the front is perfect for creating a large amount of spray for the wind to throw over and into the boat. Now, I'm a pretty fair weather boatie, so this doesn't happen to me all that often, but when it's about 15 to 20 knots and more, and like I said, quarter on chop with the wind, you can expect a bit of water over. Some wide shoulders are needed here to stop your mates from nudging you out and into the elements while they're getting saturated. Usually you can hide behind the screen, but sometimes you're just better off putting on a raincoat and embracing it. Here in Queensland, from about spring to autumn, it's not really a big deal as it's quite warm and it's somewhat warm enough to enjoy. Some of you southerners in Victoria and other cold areas, you might find it a bit uncomfortable. I'd say that's its biggest problem. But as mentioned, the width also has some terrific stability advantages, and for us, this is way more useful. A blue water fisherman may or may not agree. Moving on to the included features, as mentioned, this one has the sealed self-draining floor. This was a huge selling feature for me. When it gets wet on the water simply drains out and the aluminium floor won't rot over a few years. You can hose it out, which is really handy when you get blood in the carpet from your catch. I don't think I'd want another plywood boat again, except maybe a small tinny. In my old boats, the screws would work loose and just be a pain to redo. The floor bracing would crack or cause cracking to the hull sheeting, and you'd need to replace the floor, the sections of the floor due to rot over a few years. You just don't need to stress about it dropping sinkers or other tackle anywhere near as much. I don't think the floors are fully welded in though. I think they're stitch welded in and then filled with silicone to seal it off. I think this is why they're not always considered a full plate boat by some. I wish it was fully welded, but in saying that, as an 11-year-old boat, it's still perfectly fine. The only issues with the sealed deck are when you need to feed wiring or fuel lines, as it's a bit more fiddly, but it's doable. A good trick is to attach some string or wire to the old lines and then reattach it to the new lines and feed them through. Construction wise, this is a heavy tinny. It's definitely a few levels up on a Stacer or a Quinny. It rides a hell of a lot nicer than the 525 Stacer Seahorse I had, and I'd say it's a nicer ride than the 530 Quintrex I've been in before. That thing just hurt my kidneys. You'll notice the dead rise is pretty good on this thing, especially compared to the press boats like Stacer, Quinnies, Stesco, etc. This helps keep the stern nice and solid in the water, which is needed due to its wide nose, as mentioned earlier. They're built underfloor similarly to a plate boat, and this is pretty evident when you notice the horsepower this size boat's plated for. Mine's only plated for 115 horsepower or max of 185 kilos. But I've spoken to the company and they're happy to replate it to suit a newer Mercury 150 horsepower. Which brings me to the next aspect, horsepower. Mine came with the 115 E-Tech and to be honest, it's been adequate. Comparing this boat to the 545 Yalta craft, they ride almost identically. The fiberglass Yalta with a 115 four-stroke, as much as anyone says differently, in the conditions I ride, I've found them to be virtually identical, both in speed and fuel economy. Maybe the 2008 Yami was a bit more economical. Now, if I could repower this boat, my first option would be to look at a 130 to 150 horsepower. I reckon that extra whole shot would be nice and I think it would return better fuel economy. As it stands, with the 115 E-Tech, I burn about 1 litre per 1.5 kilometres, which is not that great by today's standards, where many boats are returning 1.8 to over 2 kilometres per litre. If cost is an issue, then I would consider another 115, as it's been pretty well balanced. I've heard of this size boat being fitted with 90 horsepower, and I reckon they might be fine with light loads and smooth conditions, but when you chuck a few guys on, this one can take a little while to get on the plane, so I reckon the more horsepower the better. This thing's got a 115 litre fuel tank as well. The nice touches on this boat are the size of the console. This one is really nice and wide. It handles the two 7-inch sounder GPSs fine. You could even fit a 12-inch and a 7-inch if needed. As you can see, it occupies the VHF radio, the stereo, the engine gauges, steering, compass, etc. Shelving is decent, can fit lunch, cameras, flasks and 2 deep cycle batteries for the motor guide up front. This one came with the support structure for the canopy. It's something I've considered, but not sure if it would adjust the centre of gravity and the handling. It might be a future project to build one. I'd love to learn how to have a go at aluminium welding and fabrication. I added a few rod holders to the front of the console as I have gotten more into trolling and take a number of rods out these days. The Livey tank and bait board are awesome. The Livey tank's a good size, can keep your quota of herring, yakkers or whatever for a day's fishing. The bait board is convenient too. It has 4 rod holders. I've got a plastic container from Bunnings to keep tackle and little things that pop up throughout the trip. There are 2 storage hatches, a nice long kill tank at the back. It's perfect to keep a cool bag with an ice brick for the catch. You just need to remember to put the bung in. Otherwise, at a standstill, she fills up. There's also a useful front hatch. I use it for a big bucket, towels and general stuff. There's also some really nice side storage that hold ice cream containers perfectly. I keep lively rods, rags, spare leader, fish whacker, gaff, all that stuff. Down the back you've got a few hatches. We've got a dual batteries for starting and running electronics. In the middle hatch is for the oil and the deck wash, and a handy door for the transom, then a small storage opening in the back corner. I keep the muffs and sunscreen there, and that ladder is awesome. Being the centre console, it also has a large seat box which can flip depending on whether you want to face forward or back, and it houses the safety gear of life jackets, bail, bucket, flares, that stuff. Also keep a jacket, raincoat, pants and lure trays in there. The gunnels are wide, perfect for jumping off, and the front anchor well has enough of a platform to use as a raised casting deck in smooth water. The boat has 4 rod holders, 2 on each side, plus the bait board as an extra 4, and then I'll put the other 4 on the console, so plenty. The transom area allows for standing on the back, no worries, and has never thrown any water over. You'd have to be cranking it in reverse in a swell to achieve that. It's windy out there. I think I've covered a fair bit in this vid. For me, I wanted a boat that was mostly for fishing, but could handle the family safely and easily. Would be robust and safe enough if the weather turned on me all of a sudden. And most importantly, I could retrieve it, winching it on by myself with no dramas. It's done all of the above without any dramas over and over again in those 7 years. Would I recommend it? Look, if you're using it for something similar, for similar reasons to what I do, then for sure. If for blue water use, ask others, but you do see these used in deep and open waters. At the moment, I am considering selling it, but only for the simple reason that I just don't use it anywhere near as much these days due to bike riding a lot more. It's something that I've been tossing for a while, but because it's such a great boat, I feel reluctant to, in case I regret it. I guess we'll just see what happens. Thanks for watching. Hope you got some value from it. Let me know in the comments if you've got more to add that I didn't cover, and smash the like and subscribe if you haven't. Cheers guys, hooroo.